Hi, this is Ashwin, and in this tutorial, I'm going to teach you some basics of ASP.NET MVC. And I'm going to use Visual Studio, as you can see in the screen, to do certain activities. Now, what is a Visual Studio? It's basically an IDE or integrated development environment that is made by Microsoft. Like how the same way how you use Microsoft Word to write some documents, I'm going to use this Visual Studio to create the application. I'm using Visual Studio Community Edition 2017, and I'll leave the link for download on the description. You can go through that link and select the Community Edition and download the same. Now, why we are here, that's basically because of ASP.NET MVC. So let's talk about what is MVC in the first point. That is Model View Controller. That's why it is called MVC. Now, it's basically more or less an architectural pattern, and it's going to separate the applications into three main groups, and that's model, view, and controller. Now, what happens is, using this pattern, the user request is routed to the controller, and that's responsible for working with the model to perform certain user actions, or it might retrieve some data to the user. Now, the controller is going to use or choose a particular view to display the data to the user, and it might even provide any model data if it requires. Now, this might sound a bit confusing in the beginning, but what we can do is we're going to actually create an MVC application, and then we will discuss about model view and controller while doing the lab. So to create a new project, you need to click on the file, and then you can click on new and new, and then select project, and then you need to select Visual C Sharp, and then go to the web, and then you can select the ASP.NET web application, and in the bracket you have .NET framework, and at the top drop down you have the .NET framework selected, and you can give a name to the application that you're actually trying to make, and in my case I'm going to actually name it as Binary Titans MVC movies, because I'm actually going to make an application that's going to store certain information about movies and things like that. I don't mind saving it in the default location, so I'll leave it as it is, and then I'm going to click OK. Now in the next stage, what you should be doing is you need to make sure that you have selected MVC, and you need to make sure that this is actually checked here, and in the change authentication you can either leave it empty, or you can actually go there and then select individual user accounts. Now we're going to actually have separate session on identity later, but for now you can just select the individual user account and click OK, and while we are learning about identity, we are going to get into the details of the same. Alright, so the moment you click OK, it's actually creating the project in the background, and what you actually did is these Visual Studio actually used a default template that is available for the ASP.NET MVC project, and which means that the moment you made this project, you have a working application right away without even making any code. Now, to see what's actually there in it, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually run this particular application so that you get to know what it is available for it. And there's two ways to do that. You can either click on the play button over there, or else you can click on the F5 to start the debug. And what actually does is this Visual Studio is actually going to start an IIS Express in the background, and it's going to run the application that you just made in the IIS Express. Now, when you see in this particular window, you can see that it's actually opening up the website, and you can see that there is something called localhost and a colon 62808, and what is that basically? So that's basically is you are actually running the system, this particular application on the IIS Express edition, and the port number that it has used to run this particular application is 62808. All right. Now, why is the 62808 is actually added is this particular Visual Studio, whenever we run a web project, it's going to actually just assign a random port number. Now, which means that when you are going to run this particular application, you might get a different port number. That's probably nothing to worry about. Now, you can see out of the box, you have certain things available. That is, you have a home, you have a contact, you have about pages and things like that. Now, this application also support register and login. That's because we actually selected the authentication as individual user account. Now, what we are going to do is we are going to actually change certain things in this application so that you can learn a little bit more about the ASP.NET MVC. Now, let me actually recap a bit about MVC in the first point, and then the next session we are going to actually get into the details of each. First is MVC stands for Model View Controller, and it is basically a pattern for developing application. And it's easier to actually develop, and it is easier to test because it's actually divided into 3 different parts. And what are they? That is M. M means model. Model is basically the class that represents the data of the application, and it's going to use the validation logic, and you can even enforce the business rules to the data. Now, when it comes to the view, that's basically the template file that your application is going to generate, and that's going to be a dynamically generated HTML responses. Now, that's what comes to the browser, and that's what you see so that you can actually interact with the application. Now, when it comes to the controller, that is, this is the class that's going to handle the incoming browser request, and it's going to retrieve the required model data, and then it's going to specify the required view to send the response. And we're going to cover up these in the upcoming tutorial series and show you how to use them to build an application. So in the next session, what we're going to do is we're going to begin with creating a controller class. Hopefully the session until now was informative, and if you are here until now, hopefully you liked the video as well. If yes, leave a like to the video, and to see more sessions like this, I would request you to subscribe to the channel, and that's going to give us a lot of encouragement in making a lot more videos like this. And thank you. Have a nice day ahead.